This is section 3.03 of the Unit 3 Notes, Understanding Credit. Today I am, as in you are the student, discussing how credit works so that I can calculate the amount of interest, monthly payments, and balance due on a loan. I will know I have it when I can solve problems involving credit card balances and monthly payments for a loan. The specific TEKS we're looking at for today's lesson is 3B, Analyze Personal Credit Options in Retail Purchasing and compare relative advantages and disadvantages of each option. Debit cards versus credit cards. So each one has its own use, or its specific use. Debit cards, for example, when you use debit cards to purchase goods or services, money is withdrawn directly from the card owner's bank account. So debit cards are tied directly to the money that you have in your bank account. Whereas credit cards, when you use credit cards for purchasing, the card owner is borrowing money from the credit card company and will receive a bill that they must repay. When you borrow money from a bank or from a lender, there is interest that accrues over time if you don't pay it all off at once. So for big purchases on credit cards, you may not be able to afford all of that purchase through your debit card, so therefore you put it on a credit card. Well, your credit card allows you to pay off that balance on a monthly basis. And every month that you don't pay it all off, interest accrues. And that's how the banks make money. There's one of the ways that they make money is through the interest off of lending money to other people. So, debit cards and credit cards, there are advantages and disadvantages to either one. Let's talk about advantages to debit cards. Some advantages, not all of them are listed here, but some of the advantages include no cash or checkbook needed, safe as you only you need to know your PIN number, and no one else can access your money as long as nobody else knows your PIN number. Some disadvantages to debit cards: you must have enough money to cover your purchase. You must remember things like your PIN number. There are overdraft fees. If you overdraft or overdraw your money, it will cost you money. And then some banks charge a monthly fee. So because debit cards are directly tied to your money, you're supposed to only use what you have in your account. However, there are cases where you are not paying attention to how much money you have, and you overdraft money that you didn't have available. Therefore, you're essentially getting the bank to pay for your the money that you didn't have, and there are fees tied to overdrafts, and you will have to pay those back if that ends up happening. So you want to try to avoid overdrafting as much as possible so that those fees won't accrue. Now let's move on to credit cards, advantages and disadvantages to those. Advantages to credit cards: you can buy before you have the money saved. If stolen, you're only responsible for a certain portion. They're good for emergency expenses, and you can build positive credit history if used correctly. Now, credit score, which you may learn later, is a score that tells the lenders that are lending you money how well you're able to manage your money. And the higher your credit score, the lower your interest rates for paying that back will be, which is a good thing. You don't want high interest rates, you want low interest rates. Whereas the lower your credit score is, the higher those interest rates are, because the lower your score, that indicates to the lender you're not very good at managing your money or paying your loans on time, essentially, and therefore you're a much riskier client to lend money. And so the interest rates to lending money will be high if your credit score is low. And then vice versa, if your credit score is high, your interest rates will be low. So credit cards allow you to build credit score for things that involve bigger amounts of money, bigger loans, such as a car loan, personal loan, mortgages, etc. Another thing that we kind of glossed over, good for emergency expenses. Sometimes you cannot pay $1,000 to fix your car, and so a credit card allows you to pay $1,000 to essentially borrow that money and then pay it off as you go. So those are some advantages to credit cards. Disadvantages: there are yearly fees for having an account open. You have to pay interest on an unpaid balance. So while you are allowed to pay it off for longer periods of time, each month that the balance is not fully paid, interest accrues and you will have to pay off more as you go, depending on how you manage your money, by the way. You may pay more for things because of the interest, and then late fees if not paid on time each month. Credit cards. I believe we already talked about some of these, but let's see what these advantages are. Pros and cons of using credit cards. Credit cards allow you to make purchases when you don't have enough cash. Credit cards are easy to use for online purchases. Disadvantages. You are charged interest on the money loaned to you unless you pay the full credit card bill within a specified period of time. Credit cards might tempt a person, this one's a big one, might tempt a person to spend more money than he or she can afford. Because you are allowed to pay that money off as you go. And so the temptation to use your credit card for big purchases because you can pay later is very big. There's a lot of people that get into major credit card debt because of that. You have to control your urge to spend and use these things unless it's an emergency. So let's move on. We're going to look at some credit card problems. I'll show you how everything is done by hand through the calculator. So here's some credit card formulas that we will go over in in example one in the next few slides. So credit card formulas: unpaid balance is the previous balance minus the payments and credits. Periodic rate is the annual percentage rate divided by 12. So the annual percentage rate is the percentage rate that the unpaid balance gets increased over time. And then the increase is done through monthly or on a monthly basis. And so a certain percentage will go up per month based on what the APR is, the annual percentage rate. The finance charge: unpaid balance times the periodic rate. The new balance: unpaid balance plus the new transactions plus the finance charge. So we're going to look at an example. Here are the steps to that example we're fixing to look at. Step one, we need to determine the unpaid balance. And then you can see one of the formulas that I showed you in the previous slide. Step two, determine the periodic rate. Step three, determine the finance charge. And then finally, step four, determine the new balance. So let's look at how all of this gets applied in example one. And I'm going to cover this up and reveal it as we go so that I'm not overloading y'all with too much information as I talk. Josie's statement shows a previous balance of $719, a payment of $380, and a new transaction, emphasis on the word new, of $622.48. Her APR, her annual percentage rate, is 6.2%. What is Josie's new balance? So, how do we solve a problem like this? Which, by the way, on a quiz, you're not going to see these 4 steps. You're just going to see this problem and need to know what you need to do to solve this. So, step one. First thing you need to do is determine the unpaid balance. So we had a previous balance of $719, and then we made a payment of $380. Okay, this new transaction doesn't matter right now. We need to first figure out what the unpaid balance is. So $719 minus $380. Which is $339. So this is the unpaid balance. This is the balance that's going to get charged with the annual percentage rate, the APR. So now we need to determine the periodic rate because we're trying to figure out what the new balance is for the next month. So to determine the periodic rate, we need to get the APR, which is 6.2%, and then divide it by 12. However, 6.2% needs to be changed into its decimal form. So either use the shortcut or divide by 100. Either way, you will get 0.062 as your APR. So then divide that by 12, 0.062. Well, first off, 6.2% divided by 100 to change it to its decimal form. Then divide that by 12, and we have 0.00516 repeating, which will be about 0.0052 if we round it to about 4 decimal places. Okay, now we need to determine the finance charge. The finance charge is whatever the balance is times that periodic rate, which was 6.2%. Well, periodic rate 6.2% divided by 12 and so on. So this is the monthly periodic rate. So now we're going to multiply those two together. 339 times 0.0052, and we get a finance charge of $1.76. Should be 76. Yeah, that should be 76. Okay, now we're going to add everything together to determine the new balance. So the new balance is the unpaid balance plus the new transaction, which is added at the end of all of these charges, then plus the finance charge. So now add all this. We're going to add, let me circle what we're going to add. We're going to add the 339, the 176, and the $622.48. So let's add all of that together. 339 plus 1.76 plus 622.48. It may be a few decimals off. Let's see. $963.24. So 963.24. And that is Josie's new balance after all of these things happen with her account. That's it for the example. Okay, you try number one. Again, if you're following along in Class Kick, then I would like for y'all to go through this step by step, answering each of these boxes and checking your work. You can move this black box right here to see if you're doing everything correctly. Here's the problem. John's statement shows a previous balance of $676, a payment of $250, and a new transaction of $843.18. His annual percentage rate, APR, is 10.2%. What is John's new balance? So, step 1, determine the unpaid balance. Step 2, determine the periodic rate. Step 3, determine the finance charge. And then step 4, determine the new balance, and then you will get your final answer. So at this moment, I would like for y'all to pause the video and attempt to do this problem on your own. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on and show y'all how to do this. So his previous balance is $676 with a payment of $250. So step 1 needs to take the 676 and subtract 250. And we get $426. So this is the unpaid balance. Excuse me. Now to determine the periodic rate, the monthly periodic rate, we need to take the APR, the annual percentage rate, and divide it by 12. Now, APR is 10.2%, but we need to turn it into its decimal form. So either use the shortcut, move the decimal to the left twice, or simply divide by 100. Either way, we get 0.102. Now take that number divided by 12, and we get 0.0085. Now, to determine the finance charge, we take the unpaid balance, which was $426, and then we multiply with 0.0085. So 426 times 0.0085, we have $3.62, so 3.62. Remember, we're rounding to two decimal places in terms of money, unless otherwise stated. So $3.62. So now I'm going to take the unpaid balance, finance charge, and then the new transaction of $843.18, and then add that all together. So again, the unpaid balance, which was 426, the new transaction, which was $843.18, with the finance charge, which was $3.62. I'm going to add that all together, and then that will be my new balance for this credit card. 426 plus 843.18 plus 3.62. And we get $1,272.80. So 1272.80. Make sure I didn't skip anything. Yep. 1272.80. This is the new balance after all of this has been applied. And that's it for you. Try number 1. Calculating monthly payments. Monthly payments equals the total payment of the loan divided by the number of months for these scenarios. So example number 2. Let me cover this. Jan's total payment for her loan, so this is the total payment for the loan, was $13,794. She paid it off after making 36 monthly payments. What was her monthly payment? So we want to split this total payment into what we paid per month. So $13,794 divided into the total amount of months, or divided with the total amount of months. So plug that into your calculator. It's a simple division problem. 13,794 divided by 36. And we have $383.17 if we round it. That's it. That's it for example 2. You try number 2. Tim's total payment for his loan was $19,257. He paid it off after making 48 monthly payments. What was his monthly payments? So here are the steps for you to fill out on ClassKick. At this moment, I would like for y'all to pause the video, go through the work, and then check your answer by moving this box, see if you did everything correctly. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on and show y'all how to do this. So again, pause the video, try this. Otherwise, let's move forward. Total payment was $19,257, so $19,257. And he paid that off in 48 months. So what was his monthly payment? Well, let's divide the two and we'll find it. So $19,257 divided by 48. And if we round it to two decimal places, this should be 401.19. So 401.19, which means the monthly payment is $401.19. That's it for you try number 2. So now moving on to a different type of problem. We're going to calculate monthly payments for something that we have to pay back in many years. Now this is going to involve an amortization loan formula. However, we're going to use a table that has done a whole bunch with a whole bunch of calculations already done to shorten the amount of work that we have to do. Because otherwise we would be filling out a lot into this amortization loan formula. I'll show you as an aside what that amortization loan formula is, but we're going to be using a much shortened version of those calculations. We're going to be using a table with all of those calculations done, and then we just have to use that table to find the final answer. Anyways, step one is to find the number of hundreds borrowed, which will be the total amount of the loan divided by 100. From there, to find the monthly payment, we take the number of hundreds borrowed and then multiply by the monthly payment per 100. This is the part right here that will be given to us on a table. So let's see how this gets applied to in the example problem. Example 3. Sandra borrows $16,430 at 13.5 APR. So she will pay it back in 3 years. What will her monthly payment be? So first, step one is figure out how many hundreds are borrowed from this figure right here. So to do that, actually let me cover some things real quick. So again, to do that is to take the total amount of the loan divided by 100. So I'm going to take 16,430 divided by 100, and I get 164.3. So that's the amount of hundreds that's being borrowed. The reason why I'm doing hundreds is because the table we're fixing to use is labeled as monthly payment per 100. So this table has been calculated for every 100 that I borrow. So that's why I'm dividing by 100. Now, step two is to take the number of hundreds borrowed and then multiply by the payment per 100. So this table has things like the amount of years and the APR percentage rate listed out. And we need to figure out where on this table our rate will be applied. So 13.5% APR is using this column right here. And then the amount of years that we're going to be using, or that we're going to pay it back in, is 3 years. So now, figuring out where that intersects, we see that the rate is 3.394. So the monthly payment per 100 is 3.394 times the number of hundreds borrowed. So now we're going to multiply those two. 164.3 times 3.394. And we get $557.63 as our monthly payment. And that is our final answer. So again, just to reiterate, we took the total loan divided by 100 to figure out the number of hundreds borrowed, which is 164.3. Then, using the APR and the amount of years we're paying this back, we looked on the table that has all these calculations done to figure out what number we're going to use to find the monthly payment. So for the 13.5 APR and then the loan being carried out for 3 years, we will have 3.394 per $100 borrowed. So multiply that with 164.3 and we get a monthly payment, $557.63. And that's it. Now, in case you were wondering, this is completely optional, not tied to the problems that we're doing. But in case you were wondering where this came from something called an amortization loan formula, where A is the payment per the payment amount per period, P is the initial principal or the starting loan amount, R is the interest rate per period as a decimal, and then N is the total number of payment periods. Okay? So 3 years means this is going to be carried out for 36 months. The rate was 13.5%. So for the monthly rates, the APR, we turned it into a decimal and then divided by 12. The the total loan was $16,430. Use all of these and apply it to the formula that we see right here, and we get about $557.56. Notice how it's just a little bit different by cents. It's because these are using more exact numbers. But this table is a shortened version of this, so that we don't have to worry about plugging it into a formula and then solving. So we only have to do much more minimal things. Okay, so now amortization, something else you may want to know, can refer to the process of paying off a debt over time in regular installments of interest and principal sufficient to repay the loan in full by its maturity date. Well, what's a maturity date? A maturity date is a specific date on which the principal amount of a debt, like an installment loan, mortgage, or bond, is due, along with any interest payments. Maturity dates help lay out the timelines of investments or loans and can affect interest rates and the level of risk associated with products. So, again, in case you were wondering all of this, why we were using the table, where did this table come from, etc. It came from the amortization loan formula. Anyways, now back to what we're actually doing for our problems. So this was the example. Now let's do the you try number 3. Dan borrows $25,950 at 11.5% APR. He will pay it back in 5 years. What will his monthly payments be? So step 1, find out the number of hundreds borrowed. You'll take the total amount of the loan and then divide it by 100. Then use the table to figure out how much you're going to pay, what your monthly payment will be per 100. And then you're going to multiply that with the number of hundreds borrowed to get your final answer. So go ahead, and if you're doing this on ClassKick or if you're doing this on paper, pencil, and calculator, pause the video, try this problem on your own, move this box to check to see if you're doing everything correctly, if you're doing all this in ClassKick. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on and show y'all how to do this. So Dan borrows $25,950. I'm going to figure out the number of hundreds borrowed by dividing that number by 100. And I can use a shortcut using the power of tens. Dividing it by 100 means I just move the decimal place to the left twice. So this is 259.5. And just to show you on the calculator, 25,950 divided by 100, 259.5. So now I'm going to multiply that with whatever I find from the table. And what I need is the APR and the amount of years this loan is being carried out. So the APR is 11.5%. I'm going to use this column right here. And then I'm going to pay it back in 5 years, which means I'm going to use this last row. And then where they intersect is the rate that I use, which is 2.199 for the monthly payment per 100. So 2.199. So multiply that with 2.199. And I have $570.64. So 570.64 for my monthly payment. And this is the final answer. That's it for you try number 3. Okay, so now we're going to try to do the exact same thing, except now instead of us being given years, we're going to be given the amount of months that we're going to pay this back in. So some similar processes, but some added things to it. So step 1, we're still going to figure out the number of hundreds borrowed. We're going to take the total amount of the loan divided by 100. Step 2, though, is we're going to find the total interest. Number of hundreds borrowed times the interest per 100. Then we're going to find the total payment of the loan, which is the amount borrowed plus interest. And then find what his monthly payment will be all together with the interest included. So we're going to take the total payment of the loan and then divide it by the number of months that this is being carried out. So here we go. Example 4. Example 4. Mary will borrow $850 at 9% APR. Let me cover some of this up, by the way. Again, Mary will borrow $850 at 9% APR. She will pay it back over 12 months. What will her monthly payment be? So our first step is to find the number of hundreds borrowed. We're going to take the total amount of the loan divided by 100. So that should be 8.5, but I'm going to use my calculator here. 850 divided by 100 means 8.5. Now, this table is going to tell us what total amount of interest we're going to pay. So it's a little bit different in the previous problem. The previous problem had monthly payment per 100. So now this table is configured to calculate the amount of interest per 100. So to figure out the amount of interest, we need to use the number of hundreds borrowed and then multiply by the rate that we find according to our problem. So our problem involves 9% APR and it being paid back over 12 months. So now find out where on the table this intersects. This intersects at 9. So now we're going to multiply 8.5 by 9. And we get $76.50. So this is the amount of interest that gets added. So now we're going to add that to the 850 to get the total payment for the loan. So 850 plus 76.5. So 850 plus 76.5. We get $926.50. Okay. Now the last thing is to find his monthly payment. We're going to take that number divided by the amount of months this loan is being carried over, which is 12, to get our monthly payment. So now 926.5 divided by 12, rounded to about 2 decimal places, this should be $77.21. So $77.21. And that is our final answer for example 4. All right, you try number 4. Tom will borrow $6,750 at 7% APR. He will pay it back over 18 months. What will his monthly payment be? Step 1, find the number of hundreds borrowed, similar to example 4. Step 2, find the total interest using this table. Step 3, find the total payment of the loan. And then step 4, find his monthly payment. So if you're doing this on ClassKick, try to answer step by step what each of these boxes should be. And then at the end, you can check to see if you did everything correctly by moving this box and checking your answers. So go ahead and pause the video. Try this problem on your own. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on and show y'all how to do this. So Tom will borrow $6,750. How many hundreds is that? Well, divide that by 100, which either use the shortcut or use your calculator. This will be 67.5 100ths borrowed. Okay, now to find the total interest, I'm going to use 67.5 and then multiply with the interest per 100 according to the table. So the interest per 100 uses 7% APR. Let me do this instead. And then we're paying this off in 18 months. So 7% at 18 months means this will be $10.5. So this is 10.5 per 100 borrowed. Multiply those two together. we get $708.75. So 708.75. So this is the amount of interest that we just earned. Now, to find the total payment of the loan, we're going to take the amount borrowed, which was $6,750, and then add that with the interest, which was $708.75. So 708.75 plus 6750. We have 7458.75. So 7458.75. $7,458.75. Okay, I'm just making sure I entered everything correctly. So now we're going to split this up into what his monthly payment will be. So we're going to take that number, 7458.75, and divided by the number of months this loan is being carried out, which is 18 months. So divide this by 18, round our decimal to 2 decimal places, and we get 414.38. 414.38. And that will be our monthly payment to pay off the loan in 18 months. And there it is. Okay, that's it for you try number 4, and that's it for 3.03 notes in general. So if you have any questions, let me know. You can find my information in the course itself, my phone number and email. If you need help with me going over anything involving the quiz, the test, or this problem right here, or these problems in the notes right here, let me know. Now, if it's a quiz or test, I may not be able to tell you the whole answer, but I may be able to guide y'all to the correct work. So anyways, if y'all need anything, let me know. Otherwise, I will see y'all in the next video. Take it easy, everybody.